The Monterey County Courthouse was unusually crowded that morning. Camera crews lined the hallways, reporters whispered into their microphones, and curious onlookers filled every seat. Why all the fuss? Because Clint Eastwood, a Hollywood icon well into his 90s, was about to face off against a wealthy real estate developer, representing himself in a property dispute. No lawyers, no entourage, just Clint and his conviction that he'd been wronged. As phones recorded every moment and the judge prepared to gavel the session to order, everyone wondered, could a legendary actor outmaneuver a high-powered legal team in a real courtroom? It all began with a stretch of coastal land Clint had purchased decades ago in Carmel by the sea. He loved the tranquility there, the rolling waves, the fresh ocean breeze, the small-town charm. Over the years, he carefully maintained the property, respecting every boundary line and local ordinance. Then came Gerald Madsen, a real estate mogul known for building upscale condos in scenic spots. According to Clint, Madsen's latest construction project had spilled over onto land that wasn't his. Repeatedly, Clint's team sent cease and desist letters and made phone calls, but the developer brushed them off. Finally, with the disputed structure nearly finished, Clint filed a lawsuit. The real shocker was his decision to act as his own lawyer. "I've read enough scripts to know how to deliver a line," he joked to a friend, "but I also know how to do my homework." Many believed it was a risky move. Others saw it as classic Eastwood grit. If something mattered to him, he'd tackle it head-on. The presiding judge, Wallace Bridger, was a seasoned jurist in his early 60s, known for his no-nonsense approach. He entered the courtroom that day, eyeing the bustling crowd of reporters. His gaze landed on Clint, who sat calmly at the plaintiff's table, wearing a simple blazer and reading glasses perched low on his nose. "Mr. Eastwood," Judge Bridger began, tapping his gavel for attention, "I understand you've opted to represent yourself in this property dispute." Clint nodded once. "Yes, Your Honor, I'll be presenting my own case." A faint ripple of laughter ran through the gallery. After all, it wasn't every day you saw a Hollywood legend stand up against a powerful developer without a lawyer. At the defense table, Gerald Parker, Madsen's top-tier attorney, exchanged a smug grin with his client. They looked ready to steamroll an aging actor who, in their eyes, was probably in over his head. Judge Bridger gave Clint the floor for an opening statement. The courtroom fell silent as he rose, posture straight, voice low. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen," he began. "In 1992, I bought a piece of land in Carmel by the sea. My property lines were surveyed and recorded. Over the past year, Mr. Madsen's development extended onto that land, ignoring every warning I issued. I'm here today because if we don't stand up for our rights, we lose them." He spoke plainly, no grand theatrics. Yet there was a certain gravitas in his tone that made the room lean in. Judge Bridger, who'd expected some awkward performance, found himself intrigued. Then it was Gerald Parker's turn. Dressed in a tailored suit, he strutted to the center. "Members of the court, property lines can be tricky. My client is a respected businessman who believed he had every legal right to build where he did. This is a simple misunderstanding, nothing more." He cast a sidelong glance at Clint. "And while we respect Mr. Eastwood's legacy in film, we must remember, real law isn't scripted." Some in the crowd chuckled. Clint's expression remained unreadable. As the trial moved into evidence presentation, Clint introduced aerial photographs showing the boundary lines before and after Madsen's construction. Each photo, time-stamped, revealed how the developer's crew had gradually crept onto land that wasn't theirs. Parker objected. "Your Honor, Mr. Eastwood isn't a licensed surveyor. He shouldn't interpret these images." But Clint countered calmly, I'm not interpreting, I'm demonstrating. Anyone can see the property lines here, he said, pointing with a pen, and the new buildings over it. Judge Bridger, peering at the photos, allowed them in. The smirk on Parker's face wavered. Next came cease and desist letters, all ignored by Madsen's team. I tried to handle this quietly, Clint explained, but they gave me no choice. Gerald Parker presented official blueprints they claimed justified the condo's location. These plans, he insisted, were filed with local authorities. If there's an overlap, it's likely due to outdated surveys on Mr. Eastwood's side. He turned to Clint with a condescending smile. Have you considered that your own documents might be the ones in error? Clint's response was measured. I considered it. That's why I double-checked with county records. Everything matches my claim. Did your client do the same? Parker hesitated, shifting his weight. We have reason to believe the county records are inconclusive. Judge Bridger took note of the defense's vague stance. The tension in the room thickened. This was no easy mismatch. Clint seemed to have done more homework than the defense anticipated. By midday, the court broke for recess. Reporters swarmed outside, delivering quick updates. Clint Eastwood's evidence-stuns defense read one headline. Inside his chambers, Judge Bridger mulled over the morning's proceedings. He had expected a spectacle, maybe some star power overshadowing facts. Instead, Clint was calm, direct, and well-organized. This is no clueless actor, the judge murmured to a clerk. He's treating this like any other job, just with legal documents instead of a film script. When the trial resumed, Clint introduced a surprise witness, Daniel O'Malley, a former construction foreman who'd worked on Madsen's project. Parker immediately objected, saying the witness wasn't on the official list, but Judge Bridger allowed it, given O'Malley had come forward only days before. O'Malley, looking nervous, testified that he'd seen two sets of plans, one official, one that pushed the boundary further. We were told to follow the second plan, he admitted. I tried to ask about property lines, but they said to keep quiet. A shocked murmur rippled through the gallery. Parker's face blanched. Madsen stared daggers at O'Malley. Clint asked softly, "Why come forward now?" O'Malley swallowed. "I heard you were standing up for your land on your own. Figured I shouldn't be part of a cover-up." He handed over a USB drive containing digital records verifying the altered plans. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Judge Bridger called for order, glaring at Parker. "Do you have an explanation for this?" Parker fumbled. "These documents are new to us, Your Honor. We can't confirm their authenticity." But the damage was done. Madsen's carefully curated narrative of an innocent mistake began to crumble. The next day, Gerald Madsen took the witness stand. Dressed in an expensive suit, he attempted to project confidence. He insisted the overlap was an honest misunderstanding, and any suggestion of deliberate wrongdoing was ridiculous. Clint rose for cross-examination. "Mr. Madsen, do you deny receiving multiple warnings from me pointing out the exact property lines?" Madsen hesitated. I recall some letters, but they were ambiguous." Clint held up copies. "Ambiguous? Each letter specifically cites the recorded boundary. Did you ever stop construction to verify the claim?" Madsen's gaze flicked to Parker, then back to Clint. "We believed we had the right to continue. Our lawyers assured us we were fine." "So you built first and asked questions never," Clint said dryly. The courtroom chuckled quietly. Even Judge Bridger allowed a faint smile. Madsen's confidence wavered. It was clear who the jury found more credible. Gerald Parker, rattled by O'Malley's testimony and the consistent evidence, tried one last approach. painting Clint as an out-of-touch celebrity. "Ladies and gentlemen," he told the jury, "Mr. Eastwood is used to having cameras, fans, and a script that always ends in his favor. But real property law isn't about theatrics. It's about careful legal interpretation, which my client followed to the best of his ability." Then came Clint's closing argument, quiet, succinct, yet undeniably resonant. "This isn't about being a movie star," he said, voice steady. "It's about standing up when someone crosses a line, literally. Mr. Madsen built on my land, ignored every warning, and now we have proof his team tried to cover it up. The law should protect the rightful owner, no matter who that is." After a short deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict in Clint Eastwood's favor. They declared Madsen had knowingly encroached on Clint's property and awarded compensation for damages. The courtroom erupted in chatter, cameras flashed, and reporters rushed for quotes. Judge Bridger thanked the jury, then turned to Clint. "Mr. Eastwood," he said, "despite my initial reservations, I commend you for your thorough presentation." Outside, the media frenzy hit a fever pitch. Microphones hovered inches from Clint's face. "How does it feel to beat a wealthy developer with no lawyer by your side?" one reporter asked. Clint gave a small shrug. "I didn't beat him. The facts did. I just laid them out." Within weeks, Madsen's partially built condo was ordered demolished where it extended onto Clint's land. Videos of bulldozers tearing down the structure went viral. Social media buzzed with admiration for Clint's dogged perseverance. Some headlines read, "Eastwood's real-life Western, lawman of his own land." Gerald Madsen, meanwhile, faced a storm of bad press. His attempts to appeal gained little traction once O'Malley's records became public. Investors withdrew from his other projects, citing concerns about ethics and potential legal issues. Judge Bridger issued a formal statement praising the jury for upholding property rights and recognizing that a well-prepared individual can seek justice without legal counsel. Legal analysts discussed the case as a landmark example of how a pro se litigant, if disciplined, could triumph over a corporate might. Not long after the final demolition, Clint stood on the reclaimed portion of his property at sunset, gazing at the pristine coastal view. No cameras, no crowd, just him and the ocean breeze. The boundary was once again as it should be. A neighbor strolled by, tipping his hat in greeting. "Heard you won the case. Congratulations. Must feel good to keep your land intact." Clint smiled faintly. "It does, but it's not about feeling good, it's about doing what's right." One morning, a casual-looking Judge Bridger appeared at Clint's gate, wearing a baseball cap instead of robes. Clint, a bit surprised, invited him to sit on the porch. Over coffee, the judge confessed, "When I saw you that first day, I expected a fiasco, some star trying to grandstand. Instead, you presented facts like a seasoned lawyer." Clint chuckled softly. "I've been around enough scripts to know you need preparation to pull off any role. This was just another role, but with real stakes." Bridger nodded, taking a sip of coffee. "You reminded me why the court exists, for truth, not theatrics. I appreciate that." Meanwhile, in a downtown office, Gerald Parker and Gerald Madsen parted ways in frustration. Parker was overheard telling colleagues, "He blindsided us with that foreman's testimony, and I can't represent a client who withholds info about second plans." Madsen's empire took a hit as shareholders lost confidence in his business practices. He muttered publicly about unfair media bias, but few sympathized. The story became a national talking point, a legendary actor beating a wealthy developer in court alone. Talk shows invited property law experts to discuss the case. Some critics argued that Clint's fame helped sway public opinion, but most legal commentators emphasized the thoroughness of his evidence and the revelations from O'Malley. Social media lit up with hashtags like #EastwoodJustice and #StandYourGround as people celebrated the idea that even a powerful developer couldn't bulldoze someone's rights. A few fans joked that it was Clint's best performance yet, no script needed. At a local community center, Clint was invited to speak to a small group of law students and concerned citizens. Standing at a modest podium, he recounted how he'd spent months poring over property statutes and prior case rulings, determined not to be outmaneuvered. "I'm no attorney," he said, "but I do know how to read. And if you care enough to do the work, you can fight for what's right." He also praised Daniel O'Malley, the whistleblower foreman, for risking his livelihood to tell the truth. "Sometimes it takes just one person's courage to tip the scales," Clint said. The audience gave him a standing ovation, more inspired by his humility than his stardom. Weeks later, the hustle died down. The cameras left, the news cycle moved on. But Clint's land stood as a quiet testament to the principle that no one, no matter how rich or powerful, should trample another's rights. In a brief interview for a local paper, Clint offered his final reflection. "People asked why I didn't hire a big-shot lawyer. Truth is, I wanted to face this head-on. If you know your case and believe in it, you can stand up to anyone. That's not Hollywood talk, it's just the truth." Late one afternoon, Clint walked along the water's edge, footprints trailing in the sand behind him. The wind carried the sound of seagulls and distant waves. He paused near the spot where Madsen's condo had once intruded, now just empty land returning to its natural state. He inhaled the salty air, letting the sense of victory settle. This time it wasn't a scripted triumph or a movie climax. It was real. He'd gone toe-to-toe with a developer who thought he could bend the rules, and he'd shown that determination and honesty could prevail. Turning back toward home, Clint tipped his hat against the sun's glare. One more chapter closed, one more lesson learned. When you stand up for what's yours, the quiet power of truth can outlast any facade of wealth or intimidation.